Marilyn Monroe stands in a bookstore's philosophy section. She's reading book spines. Taking her time, the sales clerk watches and tells his coworker, "These books are too complex for her type. She should stick to lighter material." His voice carries. Marilyn hears it clearly. Doesn't look at them. Doesn't argue. Just selects her books. When she brings them to the counter, what she says about them in fluent German leaves the clerk speechless. Before we continue with this story, please take just 10 seconds to subscribe and hit that like button. It helps us bring you more stories like this one. Now, let's discover together what really happened in that bookstore. New York City, Saturday afternoon, autumn, Upper West Side. A small independent bookstore between a coffee shop and dry cleaner. Brennan's, family-owned since 1923. 3 stories, narrow, deep, floor-to-ceiling shelves. Books everywhere. Smell of old paper, classical music from a radio behind the counter. Owner Thomas Brennan, 48, grandson of the founder. Lives upstairs. Never married, books are his life. Knows every section, every author. Takes pride in personal service. Working today, Daniel, 23. Columbia graduate student, philosophy, thesis on phenomenology. Been here 6 months. Likes the quiet. Likes serious readers. Daniel judges readers quickly. Can tell who's genuine or posing. Who reads versus who performs. He's seen people buy Nietzsche for their shelf. People wanting recommendations but rejecting anything challenging. Daniel finds this frustrating. At 3, the door opens. A woman enters, dark sunglasses. Long coat. Headscarf. Simple clothes. Moves quietly. Walks past the counter. Heads to philosophy section. Daniel watches. Doesn't recognize her. Probably lost, probably wants self-help or fiction. This is Marilyn Monroe. Daniel doesn't know. The disguise works. She chose this place because it's small. Out of the way. Not where celebrities shop. Where she can browse in peace. Be anonymous. She's been coming 3 months. Always disguised. Thomas never recognized her. That's why she returns. One place where she's just another customer. Marilyn walks to the philosophy section. Back corner of the 2nd floor. Narrow aisle. Shelves packed tight. She's looking for something specific. Been reading Kant. Finding it challenging. Wants secondary sources. Commentary, help understanding the arguments. She knows Thomas keeps philosophy criticism on the shelf near the window. She heads there. Starts reading spines. Looking for familiar authors. Names she recognizes from footnotes. From bibliographies. Daniel follows her upstairs. Not obviously, just checking on sections. Straightening books, but really watching. Wondering what she's doing in philosophy. She doesn't look like the philosophy type. Too concerned with appearance. The sunglasses inside. The headscarf. The effort to look mysterious. Philosophy readers don't care about that. They care about ideas. About arguments. About truth. Not about image. He positions himself near the poetry section. Close enough to observe. She's pulling books. Opening them. Reading passages. Checking indexes. She seems to know what she's looking for. That surprises him slightly. But probably she's buying for someone else. A gift maybe. A boyfriend studying philosophy. That makes more sense. Beautiful woman buying books for a smart boyfriend. Tale as old as time. Thomas comes upstairs. Carrying a box of new arrivals. Sees Daniel standing there. Asks if he's helping the customer. Daniel shrugs. Says she seems fine. Doesn't need help. Probably just browsing. Thomas looks at Marilyn. Thomas nods. Understands immediately. That's serious philosophy. Not casual reading. Not decoration. He walks to a different shelf. Pulls 2 books. Hands them to Marilyn. These might help. Different approaches. One is more historical. The other more analytical. Both respected, both clear. Marilyn thanks him. Opens one. Reads a few pages. Nods. Perfect. She'll take both. Daniel watches this exchange. Surprised. She knew the technical terms, synthetic, a priori. That's not common knowledge. That's specific to Kant's scholarship. Maybe she's a student. Maybe she's more serious than he assumed. But still, philosophy is hard. Really hard. Kant especially, the woman probably won't understand it. Probably won't even read it. Just wants to seem intellectual. Wants to impress someone. Marilyn continues browsing. She's in no hurry. Enjoys being here. Being surrounded by books. Being able to take her time. She pulls another book. Heidegger. Being in time. She's attempted this before. Found it nearly impenetrable. But she wants to try again. Wants to understand. Wants access to these ideas. Even when they're difficult. Especially when they're difficult. Daniel can't help himself. Walks over. Stands nearby. Pretends to straighten books. But really judging, really watching. Waiting for her to put it back. Waiting for her to realize it's too hard. Waiting for her to give up and head to an easier section. To popular fiction. To magazines. To something more appropriate for her type. His coworker arrives. Claire. Graduate student. English literature. She and Daniel are friends. Share breaks. Discuss books. She sees Daniel near philosophy. Sees the woman browsing. Asks what's going on. Daniel explains. That woman. Philosophy section. 20 minutes. Picked up Kant, Heidegger. Serious books. He doesn't think she'll understand them. Probably posing. His voice is low, but carries. Claire glances at Marilyn. Agrees, those books are too complex for her type. She should stick to lighter material. Philosophy is hard. Not everyone can read it. Better to know your limits. Marilyn hears this. Of course she hears this. She's 8 feet away. The aisle is narrow. Sound carries easily. She stops moving. Her hand freezes on a book spine. She heard every word, every judgment, every dismissal, every assumption about what she can and cannot understand, about what's appropriate for her type, about her limits. They've decided exist before knowing anything about her. She could turn around, could confront them, could remove her sunglasses, let them see who they're talking about, let them recognize her, let them understand they're judging Marilyn Monroe, let them experience the embarrassment of their assumptions being exposed. But she doesn't do that. Has learned that confrontation rarely teaches, rarely changes anything. People just get defensive, make excuses. The prejudice remains, just becomes more careful about when it speaks. She continues browsing, doesn't acknowledge what she heard, doesn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction, doesn't let them know they got to her, even though they did, even though their words added to the endless collection, the accumulation of moments when people decided she was empty, decided she was decoration, decided complex ideas were beyond her capacity, decided without asking, without knowing, without caring whether they were wrong. She selects books, Kant commentary, 2 of them, Heidegger's Being in Time, Phenomenology, German edition, critical text on Hegel, German edition. She reads German, taught herself over 2 years, to read philosophy in original language. Translation loses nuance. She carries selections downstairs. Daniel and Claire watch, exchange glances, surprised by the books, by the subjects, maybe buying for multiple people, a class. That makes more sense. Marilyn reaches the counter. Thomas sees her books, sees German editions, eyebrows raise. Not many people buy German philosophy texts. Asks if she speaks German. Marilyn nods. Been studying it, working on fluency. Thomas asks what drew her to German philosophy. Marilyn explains. Wanted to read Kant and Hegel in original language. Spent 2 years learning German for this purpose. Found a tutor, finally competent enough. Thomas is impressed. Serious dedication. Most people won't invest that time. He asks which Kant text. She tells him. First critique, in the Transcendental Analytic, finding it challenging, hence secondary sources. Thomas nods. That's hard. Scholars spend careers on it. He asks if she's in graduate school. Marilyn shakes her head, reading for herself. Because philosophy addresses fundamental questions. Because she wants to think seriously. Thomas is quiet, looking at her. She's exactly the reader he respects most. Reads for truth, for understanding, not for status. He asks what she thinks of Kant's synthetic a priori argument, his passion, epistemology. He rarely gets this conversation. Marilyn pauses, considers, then answers in German, fluently. Discusses space and time as pure forms, mathematical judgments, transcendental deduction, categories. Her German is clear, precise, technical. She's using philosophical vocabulary correctly. Thomas stares. He speaks German, studied in Munich, reads German philosophy regularly. He understands everything she's saying, and she's not just reciting. She's analyzing, thinking, offering interpretations, raising questions, doing philosophy, really doing it. Daniel hears the German, doesn't speak it, but recognizes it, recognizes the fluency, recognizes his own assumptions, crumbling. He said those books were too complex for her type, said she should stick to lighter material, said it loud enough for her to hear, and she was standing there, understanding philosophy deeply enough to discuss it in German. In the technical language of Kant's scholarship, while he was dismissing her capacity completely, Claire sees his face, sees the realization hitting, asks quietly, "What's wrong?" Daniel doesn't answer immediately, just watches Marilyn talk to Thomas, watches them engage seriously, as equals, as two people who care about ideas, who've done the work to understand difficult texts, who respect the intellectual challenge. His face burns with shame. Thomas is delighted. This is exactly the conversation he wants, the conversation he opened a bookstore to enable. He asks Marilyn about Heidegger, whether she's read him before, whether she finds him more or less difficult than Kant. Marilyn responds in English. Now, says Heidegger, is difficult. Kant is about precision, about careful distinctions. Heidegger is about language, about finding new ways to express ideas traditional vocabulary can't capture, both challenging, both rewarding. They talk for 15 minutes, deep conversation. Thomas forgets about other customers, forgets about inventory, forgets about everything except this discussion. This rare discussion about philosophy with someone who actually cares, who actually reads, who actually thinks. He recommends other books, other thinkers she might enjoy. She takes notes, thanks him for suggestions. Finally she pays, cash. Thomas bags her books carefully, thanks her for the conversation, says she should come back anytime, says he'd love to know what she thinks of the Heidegger, whether she finds his analysis of being persuasive. Marilyn says she will, she'll return. She always does. This is her favorite bookstore, her sanctuary, the place where she can be herself, where she can engage with ideas that matter to her, where nobody treats her as anything but a reader, a thinker, a person. She picks up her bag, turns to leave, then stops, looks at Daniel, makes eye contact. He freezes, realizes she knows he was talking about her, knows he dismissed her, knows he decided what she was capable of, without knowing anything about her. Marilyn doesn't say anything, doesn't need to, just looks at him, long enough for him to feel it, long enough for him to understand she heard, she knows. She's letting him sit with it, with his assumptions, with his judgment, with being completely wrong. Then she leaves. The door closes. The bell rings. She's gone. Daniel stands there, silent. Claire asks what that was about. Daniel tells her everything, about what he said, about her hearing, about the German, about the discussion with Thomas, about realizing he was completely wrong, about judging someone based on nothing, based on appearance, based on stereotypes, based on his own narrow assumptions about who reads philosophy, who can read philosophy, who deserves to read philosophy. Claire feels it too, her own assumptions, her own judgment. She agreed with Daniel, said those books were too complex, said it loud enough to carry, said it about a woman who speaks German fluently, who reads Kant and Heidegger seriously, who engages with philosophy at a level most graduate students never reach, who was standing right there, hearing everything. Thomas asks what they're talking about. Daniel explains, tells him what he said, what Claire said, about dismissing that woman, about saying she couldn't understand. Thomas's face hardens. That's exactly what he hates. Exactly what he opened this bookstore to fight against. The idea that certain people can't understand complex ideas, that intelligence is determined by appearance, by class, by assumptions. He tells Daniel that woman is one of his best customers, one of his most serious readers. And Daniel just drove her away, made her feel unwelcome, made her feel judged, in the one place she should feel safe. Daniel asks who she was. Thomas doesn't know her name. She always pays cash, never leaves information, just comes in, browses, buys, talks sometimes if Thomas initiates, otherwise keeps to herself, clearly values privacy, clearly values anonymity. And now she probably won't come back, because Daniel couldn't keep his assumptions to himself, because Daniel decided he knew who she was without asking. The next week passes. Marilyn doesn't return. Thomas watches for her, hopes she'll come back. But the door opens for other customers. Regular customers. New customers, not her. He worries she found another bookstore. Another place, somewhere she didn't have to hear herself dismissed. Somewhere people didn't judge her before she spoke. Daniel thinks about it constantly, about what he did, about his assumptions, about how quickly he decided, about how wrong he was, about how much he doesn't know about people. Just by looking at them, he apologizes to Thomas. Says he'll be more careful, more thoughtful, more aware that everyone deserves respect, deserves to be seen as they are rather than as he assumes them to be. 3 weeks later, the door opens. Marilyn returns. Thomas sees her. Relief floods his face. She walks upstairs, to philosophy. He follows after a moment. Asks if she finished the Heidegger. Marilyn nods. Found it difficult but worthwhile. She's moving on to Husserl now. Phenomenology proper. Wants to understand Heidegger's inheritance, wants the context. Thomas helps her find books. They talk. Daniel watches from the counter. Wants to apologize. Wants to explain. Wants her to know he learned something. That he's different now, but he doesn't interrupt. Doesn't intrude. Just watches Thomas and Marilyn talk. Watches two people engage with ideas, seriously. Watches what respect looks like. What intellectual equality looks like. What happens when you don't judge. When you just listen. Marilyn checks out more German texts. More commentary. More philosophy. As she's leaving, she walks past Daniel. Stops, looks at him. Says one thing. Says everyone deserves to be seen, not judged. Seen. Her voice is quiet. Kind even. Not angry. Not vindictive. Just true. She's giving him a lesson. A chance to learn. A chance to be better. Then she leaves. Daniel stands there, processing, understanding. He didn't just judge a customer, he judged a person. A person who heard him, who knew, who came back anyway, who gave him grace, who taught him something just by being herself, by not matching his categories, by proving his assumptions false. Years later, Daniel finishes his dissertation, becomes a professor, teaches philosophy. When students make assumptions about who can understand difficult ideas, he tells them a story, about a bookstore, about a woman, about philosophy in German, about assumptions and judgment, and being completely wrong. He doesn't name Marilyn Monroe, doesn't need to. The lesson stands without it. The lesson that intelligence exists everywhere, in everyone. If we're willing to see it, if we're willing to stop deciding and start asking, if we're willing to be wrong and learn from it. Think about the assumptions you make about people, about who reads what, who understands what, who deserves access to what. Marilyn Monroe stood in a bookstore and heard herself judged. Heard someone decide she was too simple for complex ideas, too decorative for serious thought. She could have confronted them, could have humiliated them. Instead, she demonstrated knowledge, demonstrated affluency, demonstrated exactly what they decided she lacked, did it with grace, with dignity, with kindness even. That's power, that's strength, that's how you change minds. Not by shouting, by being, by existing outside the boxes people put you in, by proving assumptions false just by being yourself. Subscribe for more stories about the moments we discover we were wrong, and ask yourself, who did you decide couldn't understand today?